Hello YouTube, welcome to another League of Legends guide. Today we are covering top lane Kayle.
Into the fray!
Kayle is a really strong lane bully with multiple build paths. With the AoE from her E ability and all the attack speed she gets in her build, she is a very fast farmer and pusher. Her ultimate is probably the biggest pro she has and can make a huge difference in games. She's excellent to pick when you have something like a Kog'Maw or Jinx on your team, something with insane amounts of damage but low mobility. A properly timed ultimate will ensure that they'll be able to get off a lot of their damage, and you should have a pretty effective teamfight. This ultimate, combined with her heal, gives her excellent utility, and even really strong 1v1 potential. Last but certainly not least is her incredible AoE slows. This of course is only if you do have the Rylai's Crystal Scepter, which works so insanely well with your E ability. This can provide a slow on a chunk of the enemy team, which makes kiting for your AD carry a hell of a lot easier. Now, even though she is a really good lane bully, she still has some very hard matchups. Playing against a really good Pantheon or Jax or even Irelia can be insanely hard for you, and they can end up snowballing. They're by no means an unwinnable matchup, but if they do get some jungle pressure, you could have a miserable time in that lane. With our Nashor's Tooth and Rune Page, we will have 40% CDR, but early on our E can be a little awkward since you can't actually have it up that much. In the early game, you're going to have long durations when you're not able to have your E activated, and you're a pretty shitty champion when this is the case. You're going to have to be very careful when you're going in for last hits when you are in melee against certain champions. So when exactly is it good to pick Kayle? Well, the first very obvious one is when you already know their top laner and you're very confident that you can bully them and destroy that lane, something like Singed or Trundle. These will generally be those champions which are melee only and really struggle against kiting champions. Of course, these will also be champions with no gap closer to get on you and lock you down. So another good scenario would be when you have a hyper carry like Kog'Maw or Jinx. They can get off a massive amount of damage in just the duration of your ultimate. They're pretty much always going to be the target of the enemy team, and your ultimate can give them some nice survivability. She's also fantastic against champions with single target bursts like Darius, or champions who rely on resets like Katarina. Why exactly? Well, your ultimate basically stops both of these types of champions. The last scenario where she's fantastic is against champions with single target suppression or taunts. Something like Malzahar or Skarner's ultimate can be completely countered by your own ultimate. Simply ultimate your teammate and watch them walk out. For our Masteries, we go 18 Ferocity and 12 Cunning, grabbing Fervor of Battle as our Keystone Mastery. This is by far the best Keystone Mastery in the game for Kayle, and I take it 100% of the time. As for the other Masteries, well, we do mostly magic damage, so we make sure we grab the magic penetration over the armor penetration. Now, since we also have a slow with our Q, we make sure we take that instead of Bounty Hunter. The others are pretty self-explanatory. We pretty much just grab damage wherever we can so we can bully that top laner as much as possible. For our runes, we take attack speed reds, scaling health yellows, scaling cooldown reduction blues, 2 attack speed quints, and 1 quint of scaling cooldown reduction. With all the scaling cooldown reduction from these runes and a Nashor's Tooth, we'll already be at 40% CDR, of course when we're level 18. This allows us to focus on those other damage items without having to worry about CDR at any other point in the game. As for the rest, well, generally we go for an on-hit attack speed build, so getting as much attack speed as possible works so insanely well on Kayle. Since we weren't able to grab any magic resist, we make better use of the scaling health yellows than we do armor. Now, if you were somebody who always liked to grab, say, Azonias in your build and go for Ionian Boot, you would then be able to get rid of all of this scaling cooldown reduction and then grab something like MR Blues and another attack speed Quint. I, however, never really get those in my build, so I usually opt for this exact rune page pretty much all the time. For our summoner spells, well, by no surprise, we grab Flash 100% of the time. You're not very tanky, and this can save your life in all sorts of different situations. It's then also helpful if you're looking to make a very aggressive play by flashing forward. As for the secondary summoner spell, well, it's generally Teleport. Kayle has some excellent 1v1 potential and very fast wave clear, which makes her a really effective split pusher. This summoner spell will allow you to split push for large portions of the game and still make it to team fights and objectives. For alternatives, Exhaust and Ignite are pretty good options as well. Exhaust will help you deal with assassins and increase your 1v1 potential by even more. This is especially good to pick up if your support decided to go for Ignite and you have no exhaust on your team. Ignite is then also decent, but I usually don't take it too much. I do if the mid laner wants to swap lanes pre-game and I end up going mid instead of top. It will then add some nice kill pressure, and generally it'll be more effective than teleport unless you're trying to follow around a mid laner like Twisted Fate. So now we're going to look at each of our abilities, starting with our passive, Holy Fervor. So your basic attacks and Reckoning, which is your Q, reduce enemy champion's armor and magic resistance by 3% for 5 seconds and stacks up to 5 times. So a 15% reduction to both armor and magic resist is pretty damn good. This of course works with your E, and you have a lot of attack speed, and you can get this to stack up pretty damn quick in fights. This is also part of the reason you're not always too worried about getting some magic penetration. You've already at least got some built into your passive. All in all, it's not like an incredibly broken passive by any means, but it's still a really nice thing to have and can make your damage go up pretty significantly. So next up is that Q, Reckoning. Very simply, you blast the target enemy and do some damage and slow them for 3 seconds. It's got a pretty solid base damage, and it has a 60% AP ratio and 100% bonus AD ratio. The slow is then up to 55%. Now this ability used to be so incredibly broken back in the day, but now it's just mediocre. Mediocre to the point that some people opt to max their W before their Q, and their W is just heal and movement speed increase. It's not even damage based. It used to have an amplified damage, which with a Lich Bane you could insta-gib targets. However, at least this ability has some nice ratios, and it's a really strong slow, so it's still a pretty solid ability. It's just not as good as it used to be. This, however, is of course nowhere near as good as our E ability, which is our core, and generally I like to max this one second. I don't usually opt for the W max. So here is that W ability, Divine Blessing. So you bless whoever you target, healing them and giving them bonus movement speed for 3 seconds. The heal is pretty decent at between a 60 and 240 base plus 45% AP. The bonus movement speed is then actually pretty damn nice, between 18 and 30% plus 7% per 100 AP. Now you can kind of see why some people do choose to max this one second. It is a nice heal and even better movement speed. In team fights, this can give your AD carry or another squishy carry a bunch of health and a lot of movement speed, so they're able to kite a lot easier. You can honestly sometimes save them with just your Divine Blessing. You may not even need your intervention. Either way, this is up to you. I generally choose to go for a very high attack speed on hit build. I don't usually have a ton of AP, so it's somewhat mediocre. Like I said, I do generally leave this one to be maxed last. I am a way bigger fan of the Q, and honestly, so are the vast majority of other people. So here is your bread and butter ability, your E, Righteous Fury. Part of the reason an on-hit Kayle is so strong is the passive, which actually adds bonus magic damage onto her attacks. This is between a 10 and 30 base plus 15% AP. Now this isn't massive, but when you do combine it with, the Ginsu's and the Wit's End and the Gnasher's Tooth and all that stuff, it adds up a lot. When you activate this, you ignite your sword for 10 seconds, you gain bonus attack range, doubling Righteous Fury's on-hit damage and causing her basic attacks against non-turret enemies to splash to nearby enemies for the duration. The splash magic damage is between 20 and 60 plus 30% AP and up to 40% AD. Now when this is active, you of course are a ranged champion considering you have all that bonus range. So this ability is basically summed up, I would say, just straight up incredible. Tons of added damage which can sweep through entire teams and add a ton of damage in team fights. When this is max rank and you have 40% CDR, you can pretty much permanently have this ability on, which is just fantastic. If you had to remain in durations of fights where you didn't have this available and you were a melee champion, you would be completely garbage during those durations. But anyways, of course in team fights you activate this to add that splash damage and stay at a safe range. It's also part of the reason you're such a great split pusher. You can activate this and instantly clean up minion waves. So now for your last ability, your ultimate, Intervention. You bathe the target allied champion or herself in holy light, man, some priestly shit, and then you render them immune to all damage for a few seconds, and it's up to 3 seconds. So yeah, like I've kind of mentioned before, this can be insanely strong or very mediocre, depends on the kind of Kayle player you are. Generally, you're going to be saving this for the AD carry, especially if they are a hyper carry. Now this always won't be the case. They may have had an awful game and perhaps you have something like a, let's go with Fed Xin Zhao in the jungle. Somebody who may go for a very high damage build and be able to offer a ton in team fights. Of course, this could also be yourself. There are of course very obvious uses when to use this as well. If something like a Skarner flashes in and starts pulling away your AD carry, or Malzahar flashes in and starts ultimating him, it might be a pretty good idea to save that target with your ultimate. This will also give you a 1v1 advantage against a lot of the other good split pushers out there. Somebody who's traditionally known to be a really good split pusher because they can 1v1 most champions, like say a Zed, you can stop all of their damage with your ultimate and usually kill them instead. For your ability order, we max our Intervention first, followed by a Righteous Fury, then Reckoning, and finally Divine Blessing. Now like I said before, maxing Divine Blessing third instead of Reckoning is another viable option. This increases the heal amount and movement speed it gives by quite a lot while you do level it. This will add some nice added support to your team in fights, and sometimes it can offer your team more than a Reckoning. Kayle is a champion with a very strong lane phase, unless of course she's against a champion who counters her. Your main goals are of course to gain a CS advantage, kill the enemy laner, try to harass them out of the lane, and finally take their tower. When you do manage to take down the top lane tower, you should start roaming. Look for gank opportunities mid, and try to take down that tower as well. You of course still have the option of just sitting in top lane and applying a ton of map pressure by split pushing. You will however want to make sure you're warding a lot if you are doing this. You lack mobility, the only thing you really have is the movement speed from your W, and therefore you're very gankable. If they decide not to come for you, you can keep taking towers, and if they do, your team can take an objective like Dragon. At this point I've mentioned hard matchups a couple times, well, here they are. So Pantheon is the first matchup, which is probably going to make you tilt. He's going to toss spears on you all lane long, and the moment you try to trade back, he's going to unleash his full combo on you. Your intervention is then not even that big of a deal for him either. He can simply wait it out and then re-engage. This is one situation where you may want to start getting a few points in your W rather than your Q to help sustain against all of those damn spears. So next up is Jax, and even though he is a melee champion, he can still get off a lot of good trades with his Counter Strike, Leap Strike, and Power combo, and then back and re-engage when he's got his cooldowns back. The best thing you can do here is to try to avoid getting that stun on you by getting a movement speed from your own W and then fight him. Of course, when you do finally get intervention, this will help deal with that a lot as well, although he can kind of disengage whenever he wants to. Last is Irelia, and she can be a pretty hard matchup as well. Now usually you're going to be completely fine pre-6, but if she ever wins a fight by chance or gets a gank and kills you, you are completely screwed. She's one of those champions who can snowball like crazy, and make sure you're not giving her kills. Assert your dominance early on when you're able to, because she scales really hard and she's going to become a monster if she gets some kills. In teamfights, you'll generally find yourself attacking the front line. You shred off a lot of armor and magic resist because of your passive, and you can actually deal with tanky targets somewhat easily unless they're way ahead. If you've gone for a Rylai's in your build, which I pretty much always do, you'll be able to apply some slows on targets with your Righteous Fury activated, which can help peel for your teammates. Make sure you're applying these slows so they can orb walk and kite much easier. Now of course you're also going to want to pay attention to your squishy's health pools at all times while you're fighting. A well-timed ultimate alone from Kayle can completely win a team fight, and no, I am not joking. Keep in mind, we are a very high damage, high value target as well, and ultimate is great to use on ourselves as well. Now of course it's generally better to use on a hyper carry, especially if you have a Kog'Maw who's had a relatively strong game. The amount of damage a Kog'Maw can do in 3 seconds is just absurd. Seriously, try ultimating a Kog'Maw once. When you see one in a team fight, he's gonna go ham. So now we arrive at the item build, which starts with a Doran's Ring and Health Potion. Another great alternative would be the Corrupting Potion if you were trying to have a little bit more sustain, but generally I almost always go for the Doran's Ring. For our core items, we get a Nashor's Tooth, Ginsu's, and of course Berserker Greaves. This CDR caps us right off the bat when we are level 18, gives a ton of attack speed, ability power, attack damage, just everything Kayle wants. The combination of Nashor's Tooth and Ginsu's is just honestly ridiculous. You'll be attacking so fast, you'll have decent stats, and you will go through targets incredibly fast. Now at this point, we have a very big item pool because Kayle itemizes very, very well. My favorite build is definitely the on-hit build, but there are high AP builds, there's all sorts of different things Kayle can go for. So one of my favorite items in this pool is the Runaan's Hurricane. It works really, really well with your E and spreads out even more damage. You can then combine this with a Rylai's Crystal Scepter to have slows on slows on slows, and with all that attack speed, you do devastating damage. I then add a Wit's End for all that attack speed, some magic resist, and nice extra on-hit damage as well. This here actually forms my favorite build on Kayle, the Nashor's Tooth, into Ginsu's, into Berserker Greaves, then into Runan's Hurricane, then Wit's End, and finally Rylai's Crystal Scepter. An obnoxious amount of attack speed which gets more and more as Ginsu gains stacks, a perma-slow from the Rylai's, and some great added damage from the Wit's End. Now of course you also have the option for going for a very high AP build. You could take the core and then add a Rabadon's, Rylai's, and Void Staff. This would do devastating damage, have an AoE slow, and get through any magic resist the team may have. This would be a really strong build if your team was full AD and you wanted to add some really nice AP damage in there. Other than that, we also have the Mercurial Scimitar to get through any CCs the enemy team may have. There's of course good options in both the Rapid Fire Cannon and Phantom Dancer for some added attack speed if you felt like you didn't have enough already. Then of course if there was Assassins and you kind of wanted to counter them, you could go for either the Guardian Angel or the Zonias. But yeah, that's pretty much the item build. My favorite, by far, and definitely what I would say the most effective would be the on-hit, attack speed, perma-slow build. So that pretty much covers everything I've got to say on top lane Kayle. If you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure you like and subscribe as we have lots and lots of League of Legends content to come. For anybody with Twitter, you can also follow us at egaming_TV. We do skin giveaways on there, so make sure you guys check that out if you're interested in opportunities to win free skins. All of the links and whatnot are in the video description, so you can also just look there. And thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all the support, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.
All these souls keep reincarnating out to hand. Memories of a bright future in distant land. We need to keep that suppressed. Don't to catch up and mess with the plans. Put us down to rest.
Alright, well what the memories clean like a washing machine. I'm flat pressed and steamed. No harm left when the only ink that seeps comes through is distant dreams and false realities or a vision that it may seem.